We are always exchanging information and energy in a field that we don't see. Beautiful things about family constellations is that help us to bring compassion or this humility. We don't bring judgment here in one constellation. We just wanna untangle one simple thing in the family system could create a deep transformation in one individual in a whole family system. Plant medicine and constellations work really good. Countries like Brazil, they are already using family constellations in the government, in court, for conflict resolution. My invitation to you is to take your place in life so you can fully experience this gift.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Journey Journals by Life of Gaia. My name is Gaia, and today I'm very excited to be exploring the fascinating world of family constellations. Now, family constellations is a very powerful healing modality that seems to be regaining in popularity recently, thanks to a couple of different mainstream programs that have happened, one being the Goop lab and the other one, the recent Turkish television series, Another Self. Now, I first experienced family constellations a couple of years ago, and I found the modality to be very, very powerful. And being born and raised in South Africa myself, I was even more captivated by its strong African roots. And I remember at the time doing a fair amount of research into the topic, and I was amazed to discover that Bert Hellinger, who developed the modality, had spent 16 years in South Africa as a Catholic missionary initially, and spent a lot of time with the 16 years, to be precise, with the Zulu people and the Zulu tribe, and being exposed to their culture. I feel particularly connected to this modality. And recently, I revisited Family Constellation session that I was invited to by a friend. And I had the honor and privilege of meeting a fantastic and highly skilled facilitator, Diego Salazar, who is here with me today. Diego is a transformational coach and family constellations facilitator. And I'm excited to have him here today with us to share his expertise and wisdom on the family constellations modality. So a very warm welcome to you, Diego.
Thank you very much, Gaia. I'm happy to be here having this conversation with you and with everyone else.
Wonderful. So let's jump right in. Diego, I'd love to start off just hearing a little bit from you. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to our audience and telling us a little bit about how you first developed an interest in family constellations.
Sure. Yes. I work as a transformative coach. I'm here in Florida, in the United States, but I'm originally from Colombia. 15 years ago, I started this journey in connection with healing, of course, healing myself, coming from a very dark moment in my life. From 15 years to 30 years old, I was pretty much in hell. I was in a very dark space with a lot of problems with addictions, suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety. And then at the age of 30, which is like 15 years ago, I connected with different healing modalities. I started actually with plant medicine, which was my first connection with healing. And since then, my life changed completely, and I started to study about spirituality, about healing. And a few years later, I started listening about this family constellations thing. I've been also a filmmaker of, all my life. Family constellations has a connection with theater. So it really called my attention, the connection of healing in theater. And I started just researching a little bit. I used to be very, skeptical with everything. So I was just, before actually exploring, I was researching and reading about this Bert Hellinger and all these concepts, until I finally went to a constellation and just like really blew my mind. It was hard for me to, at the beginning, to believe that what I was experiencing was truth. I was kind of doubting it, but then I kept on doing it with different teachers in different ways, until it was too evident that it was true what I was observing there. it was hard also to accept what I was observing there. Things like seeing the truth about how I was relating to my father and my mother, because that's one of the things that we see in family constellations. One thing is the relationship, and another one is the emotional link. So becoming aware of the issues that I was carrying with my father, with my mother, was challenging, but it was a really important piece. It's been a very important piece in my transformation. So that's how I started. And then honestly did just 2 constellations when one of my friends and teachers told me about this certification. And I was like, no, I just did, one constellation, two constellations. I'm not ready for this. Like, okay, well, just the invitation is here. I was meditating on it. I went to a ceremony to get guidance about it, and all the signs were there. Go jump into it, and that's what I did. And I've been, working with family constellations since 2020, and it's been a really beautiful journey of expansion for me, first of all, and for my family and for the people that I have the privilege to work with.
Beautiful. Diego, would you mind speaking a little bit into your training and your certification and your teachers?
Yes, I first studied with an organization that is based in Brazil, in Mensa Vida, like in men's life. It's a beautiful school where we have different teachers, different approaches, that gave me the opportunity to understand different possibilities, because that's one of the beautiful things about family constellations, is that one of the orders of family constellations is that everything and everyone belongs, which brings us in terms of the practice for facilitators. There is not too rigid. If you have different tools like I did, coming from, Native American wisdom and coaching and mindfulness, all those tools were welcome to what I was learning with family constellations. And it's beautiful to see like different teachers, some of them more spiritual, some of them more rational, some of them focusing on business constellations, some of them on relationships, on health. You will start to see that sometimes some facilitators have a particular call for one of these modalities, of one of these focus. I've been working more with relationships, but I also help people with health issues, projects, business. After that, I've done some other certifications. I studied also in Spain, focus more on business constellation. That I always invite people who are interested in learning about this. Is definitely so important to get a good training with good teachers. But it's like everything else. When we learn more is when we jump into the practice. And that's also beautiful about Mensa Vida in men's life, that they really encourage us to do the work, to practice, to do it. And that's where we learn. Yeah.
That's great. It sounds like a very inclusive modality, but then that allows the space to, for the individual practitioner to then sort of explore their own avenues. I love that. Before we take a deeper dive into it, I wanted to just take a moment to step back and take a second to explain to people who have never ever been to a family constellation, what is it, what could they expect, and what are some of the fundamental principles behind family constellations?
So family constellations is a systemic therapy, which means that it's a therapy that helps us to become aware of the way we are relating to the systems where we belong. One of the systems, the more important systems where we belong, is our family system. So as I was saying before, many times we have unconscious relationships, unconscious links, emotional links on traumas and patterns and memories that are affecting our current life. So in family constellations, in this systemic therapy, we bring those unconscious memories to light, to consciousness, so we can become aware of, why I'm having this type of relationship. A very common thing is like, I keep on attracting the same type of relationship. Well, that might be because you have something unconscious that you're not aware, maybe probably in your family system. Or, it doesn't matter what I do and I cannot be successful with any business. Well, that might be something related to your family system. Or I've done everything to heal this symptom, but I cannot do it. Like doctors don't know what's going on. Probably because there's something unconscious in your family system that is affecting it. You could do family constellations in group, or you could do it one-on-one. When we do it in groups, we first have an interview with the person that we call the seeker, direct constellated. It's the person who is calling the intention. It's the person who's saying, I want to heal my relationships. I want to heal this in my life. I want to bring clarity to my business, whatever that is, because you could really do constellations pretty much about anything you want. And in that first interview that we have with the seeker, we start recognizing some elements that are influencing the situation. Elements could be anything, mainly family members. So we could say, okay, that's a situation that problem that you're having with your couple, it's related with your mother or your father or your great-grandfather, or that situation with your liver, let's see your liver, or that situation with money, let's call money. So we start finding those elements, and once we find those elements, we ask people in the group to represent them. Could you please represent his mother? Could you represent the liver, money, the inner child, the perfect couple, success, all these different possibilities. And then we observe how they interact. This is where it gets very mysterious. There's many studies, theories, books that try to explain how it happens. I'm one of those that say, I really don't know how it works, but I know it works. We could talk about the quantum physics, the quantum field, how everything is connected, how, we are always exchanging information and energy in a field that we don't see. That's probably what's going on there. But what we see is that these people start to activate information in them that is related to the seeker's unconscious dynamic. So people can start to react with different emotions, like someone feels anger, someone feels happy, someone feels that, I want to lay down, I don't have energy, I hate this other element, I love this other element, I want to hug this element, I want to kick this element, I want to cry, I'm sad. All these different things come, and sometimes those experiences are not making too much sense for the representative, as we call the people who are representing the elements. But that information is making sense many times for the seeker at some point or another. So we allow that interaction to happen. And then once we recognize the unconscious dynamic, we start to bring in healing to it, start to bring harmony to it. We start to bring order to it. And we do healing sentences, which is like affirmations that can change the belief that is creating the trauma, that is creating the disorder. In that container are not just rational, but are things that are set with the heart, with the body, making changes in the unconscious mind. So we do these things. We also do some healing movements, and all these little movements help the dynamic to get in order. And once we accomplish that, usually it's the releasing of something that is stuck. We close the constellation. We say that family constellations is a humble therapy because we don't want to heal the whole world in one constellation. We just want to untangle one simple thing in the family system. But of course, many times when we untangle that simple thing, it could create a deep transformation in one individual in a whole family system.
It's fascinating listening to you speak and going back to the mystery of it all that you were referring to. I remember researching it at the time, and I don't think I have the right name for it, but people believed that it worked on something called, I think it's the morphogenic field, the same field that has birds fly in flocks or fish swim together, and they seem to know at a moment's notice, which direction to swim in. That sort of our family members or immediate family members or ancestors are all part of this field where the one affects the other, which I find fascinating. And I've definitely seen it even in the groups that you've held, how, interactions between the one affect the other. And I wanted to ask you another question. Is you've just described the group dynamic. How does it work just on a one-to-one? I've seen it, but I've never experienced it myself. So I'm just curious to understand.
It's very similar. We start also with an interview. First of all, find clarity about what we want to work. Many times people just come and they don't really know. They're like, there's something, I want to be more happy. Well, and then we just try to find clarity in what is something specific that they really want to transform in their lives, relationships, health, finances, projects. And then we also find those elements as in the group setting. But instead of asking people to represent those, we could use some little figures, to do it. These little figures have a particular color, particular size, shape. The ones I use have like archetypical symbols. So that also give us information about that element. And like the seeker and the facilitator, we also tune into the information through our senses. So we hold those figures and we allow the information to arise. And then we feel, oh, man, when I hold these, I feel sad. I want to cry. I want to, I relate in this way to the other ones. So we do that many times. I also do it through meditation. So yeah, I invite them to close their eyes, go deeper into their unconscious, and then, connect with their mother, with their father, or whoever we're healing their relationship with. And that's pretty much how we do it. In my case, I bring all the other tools that I use, like as a transformative coach. Sometimes I bring mindfulness, neuro-linguistic programming, art therapy, seeing the moment that can help the session to support the integration. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. You mentioned something about sometimes a seeker coming in and not necessarily knowing what's wrong, but just feeling like something's off. There are a lot of books that have become very popular at the moment on, for example, unresolved trauma, and it's linked to like intergenerational trauma and trauma that's passed down through ancestors or other family members. And I wanted to ask you if you could speak into how you find that unresolved issues from previous generations manifest or could manifest in today and current family members and situations.
So I like to share first this experiment that it was done with mice. They have this group of mice and they give them electric shocks, boom, and then put them cherry blossom smell, at the same time for several weeks. After some time, just with the smell of cherries, they were activating the panic response, panic state. There was no electric shocks, and it's kind of obvious for us to understand that connection that our mind is doing, with that painful exposure, and then with the smell that our senses tend to connect everything in the moment of trauma. But what's very fascinating about these experiments is that for 3 generations, these children of these mice, they were never exposed through electric shocks, but any time that they were exposed to the smell of cherries, they were activating this panic response. So in the same way that happened with mice, happened with us, can happen with anybody who's observing, watching this interview. And many of the reactions, the unconscious reactions that we experience, like, sometimes we feel afraid, anger, sad, or any other emotion that we're experiencing, sometimes we're not very clear why I'm reacting the way I'm reacting. Or what it's more common is that we justify that with things that are not real. Like, okay, I'm angry because of this that is happening. But if I do some reflection, it's not really true. So many times that's coming from unconscious memories, or what we call in family constellations, inherited emotions. That's what happens. If my grandfather or great-grandfather had a trauma and never healed it, it's part of how we call it, the system. That's nature in her beautiful wisdom, trying to help us to be more effective with our environments, sharing the information to what was dangerous and what was, pleasurable at some point. Our responsibility and our gift is that we can update that information from our ancestors, because a lot of those memories were useful at some point in our system. It's not longer serving us in a good way. So there's many implications. People that experience different types of abandonment, rejection, abuse, humiliation, bankruptcy, all these different dynamics that are against the orders of love, which are the foundations of family constellations, are inviting the system to repeat it so someone can bring it into order.
That's fascinating. That research that you mentioned about the mice, I think I read about it in the book It Didn't Start With You, which I highly, highly recommend. It was fascinating reading, and I love what you're saying about all of this. And that brings me to the next question. You know, ancestors keep coming up in the conversation. In family constellations, it seems like they come up frequently for many generations. Sometimes there's a long line of ancestors in a particular session. I'd love to hear about what the role of ancestors is in family constellations.
There's different theories, but one of them that I connect with is that we are influenced by the 7 previous generations. So if something happened in these generations with some of these ancestors, that if something happened there, that could be influencing your reality. It's very interesting that one of the most simple things and most profound things that can happen in family constellations is just the awareness of our connection with our ancestors. We tend to see ourselves as an individual separated from everything. So if I have an issue with something, I just observe myself. I always give the example of a little leaf in a tree and imagining that this leaf is having a problem. And then the question that I ask usually people is like, where would you like to find the issue of this leaf? And if you're a human being, you only look for in the same leaf. But of course, we know that now, of course, we got to look at the branches. We can, look at the roots, the soil. The environment is influencing what's happening with this leaf. Well, the same thing happened with you, with all of us. So in family constellations, we bring that awareness. We are connected to a family system, to a family soul, and that is influencing how we are experiencing our lives. And it's not just in a negative way. Like some people say, oh my God, I gotta, carry all the, trauma from my ancestors. It's not just like that, because what we call trauma, it's information. And once you integrate that transform into gifts, into lessons, into wisdom, into power, into resources. And besides having those gifts from your ancestors, we can also carry gifts that already were mastered by them. We carry their strength, many of their skills, they are there, and we can tap into that. Someone who's able to recognize their ancestors is someone who's usually stronger, is more grounded, is more connected to life. It's part of the system, it's part of life. It's how we call it, is taking his or her place in life.
Almost like standing on the shoulders of giants and standing on the shoulders of everyone who's come before you. I love that idea. Started to touch on trauma, and I wanted to ask, how is trauma approached in family constellations, and especially traumatic family histories? And also I wanted to look at, things like consent and how that all plays out in the process, and the role of safety within these sessions.
Yes. So first of all, I think it's important to understand that what we call trauma, it's a memory that it's in our unconscious mind, and it's not about what happened. It's not about the situation that happened. It's not about, for instance, someone being raped or someone being abandoned, but it's really about the meaning that the person gave to that situation. So in family constellations, we bring awareness of that. What is that you told yourself or your ancestors told themselves in the moment of that situation? So we can bring awareness, change the meaning of what happens with reality, the understanding of what's happening in your reality. One of the invitations that I give to people in one-on-one sessions or in group sessions is to make the commitment to feel, because feeling is healing. And many times what is in between the healing, it's our own resistance to feel. Many people go to therapy and only to work with their minds, with all the respect that sometimes take too much time, or sometimes that's really not even working, to create complete healing. That's why many people say that one session of family constellations, it's similar to a year of traditional therapy. But what we do here is bringing that container where we can feel safe to feel. Since the beginning, that's the invitation that I give to all of the participants. to feel, to allow whatever emotion and sensation that arises to have a space and to, to be expressed, because that's what is needed. At some point when the trauma happened, usually it was too overwhelming for the person as a child or for the ancestor. But in this container, with the support of the group, the facilitator, the person can hold a space for that difficult emotion to allow it to the emotion to do whatever it needs to do. Emotions are like entities that they also want to experience this life wave where they go, they have the climax, and all of a sudden they start to release. That might take, minutes, hours, days, or years, but we gotta allow that to happen. If not, that's stuck in our body, in our family system. So what we do here is supporting that process that nature wants to do that. It's just allowing nature to do it, her thing. What happens is that our human mind just sometimes create a resistance to that feeling, because that was part of the strategy that we developed in the moment of trauma, because it was too hard to feel. So we open that space and we allow all those emotions to arise, to be felt, and to be released. And then we have a new understanding of what happened, and then a new fruit, a new gift that we can use in our service.
I love that statement, feeling is healing. I think it's great. And I'm a huge proponent of doing that. And actually, even this whole channel, this interview series was inspired by the Joseph Campbell quotes that the cave you fear to enter holds the jewels that you seek. And, I love what you said about the moment of the trauma. It was too difficult to go into those emotions, but I feel so much healing takes place once the person has the courage to then revisit those emotions and go into that cave. There are absolutely jewels to be found. Thank you for saying that. Speaking of, feeling is healing and finding the jewels, what are some of the most profound healing outcomes that one could expect from a family constellation session?
It could be many things, like beautiful things, the beautiful relationship flourishing, couple relationships, flourishing after being stuck in conflict for, many years, parents and children healing their relationship. Many times, abundance, coming to the life of someone who's been stuck in scarcity. Many times is very beautiful and inspiring to see health transformation there. Like I've seen cancer being healed in family constellations. I know that this is a possibility, that I've seen that in my sessions. I've seen people healing different health issues. One that comes to mind, it was a woman. She was from Russia. She was just in South Florida for a little bit, and a friend of mine brought her to Family Constellations. She was in her 40s. And for pretty much all her life, she was struggling with insomnia. She couldn't sleep, but it was so bad. She tried to commit suicide a couple of times because she couldn't really sleep. And she went to all these different doctors, all these different therapies, psychologists, and she did many things. She was desperate. And in that session, we saw something that it's simple, but sometimes is hidden in our unconscious. What happened with her is that when she was a child, her father came a couple times and during the night, and he was hitting her little brother. So she had to wake up during the night and protect him. So after those couple times, she kind of stuck herself in that state where she had to be vigilant during the night to protect her brother. She just forgot about it. It was hidden in her unconscious. Once she remembered after that session, she went back to Russia and she slept for 2 days in a row, she told me. And her life completely transformed and everything started to come into harmony again.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Like this lady that you just mentioned, she had a very specific recollection regarding specific family members. It sort of brings me to the next question, because this modality is very much based on family interactions. But what happens in the case of adoption where someone doesn't know their immediate family or is estranged from them or doesn't know what their full family background and history is? How would that work?
About a week ago, we had a session with this guy who was adopted. What we see in this case is like he had very loving adopted parents, and he was able to be successful in the terms of society, but deep inside he was carrying a lot of sadness and anger, in a sense of emptiness. And what's very important, he was always having this vision of life where he didn't belong. That's something that happens. It's very common with adopted children, this feeling that they don't belong. So what is important here is also for them to remember and take their place in life, which means going back to their parents. And that doesn't have to happen physically. We do that in the session where they recognize their parents, and emotionally they become aware of that issue that they have with them, and they heal it, and they can take their place in their family of origin, because it's necessary. If the adopted child, if the adopted person doesn't do that, it's always gonna feel rejected and abandoned, that it doesn't have a place in life. This person was experiencing, we could say, like a mild symptoms, but of course, his relationships were not really flourishing. And I've seen cases where problems are way deeper, where we're talking about addictions, suicidal issues, and many other conflictive problems in their relationship. So the work here is, again, taking their parents, recognizing their system, taking in place in life, and then they can move on.
If I'm hearing correctly, it's about the adopted person sort of reconnecting with their biological parents, whether they're alive or deceased. Doesn't even necessitate having contact with them, but sort of reclaiming your place in that order, correct?
That's correct. Exactly. Yeah, they have to take their parents again, even if they know them, if they don't know them, if they are planning to know them or not. Like, for instance, with this man, he already met his biological mother, but he hasn't been able to find his biological father. But in the constellation, he was able to see him in front of him, and he was not his, of course, it was not his real biological father, but this person representing his father was able for him to become aware of what's the relationship that he was having with the father. I think it's important to understand is that anytime we're talking about our relationship with our mother or our relationship with our father, it's not just with these human beings. It's like deep inside, your relationship with your mother is your relationship with the feminine in general. What I mean by that is, like, if you have an issue with your mother, you might experiencing issues with receiving abundance, with health, where feeling worthy of receiving love. All those things could be rooted in an issue with the mother. And for instance, if you have issues with your father, you might be also experiencing issues with masculine energy, which many times it's connected to how we go into the world, our persistence to create something, our sense of direction, the way we deal with the fire, with the pressure in life, being able to say yes to something, being able to say no to something. So all these things are associated to our unconscious relationships with the mother or the father figure. So even if it's, in this case, we have, or this person had these amazing adopted parents, they were not their biological parents. They were not the parents that brought him to life. And his body, nature, his soul knows that. And as long as he's fighting with the reality, with his destiny, he's fighting with his own life. So when he's able to accept his destiny, her place in life, then he can take everything that belongs to him or to her.
That's fascinating. And speaking of bringing to life and, claiming your position in the family system and the whole parent-child relationship, what happens in the case, because I've seen them come up often in sessions, is the topic of miscarriages or abortions, sometimes stated or unstated. How do miscarriages or abortions affect the family system?
It's unfortunately a very common situation that we see in families and with women. Many women doing it from a place of rationality, like I'm not ready for this moment, and not realizing the emotional implications that's bringing to her life and to the whole system. Again, for 7 generations, that could create issues. And we do this kind of ritual. We give a place to this baby, to this soul, to this child, because the first order of love, again, Family Constellations is based on in the 3 orders of love. Those are like principles that Bert Hellinger found out that are, in life. That's how life wants to move in with these orders. And anytime we go against these orders, we create resistance, we create obstacles, we create problems in our lives. We stop the flow of life to move, freely. So when we reject someone or something which is going against the first order of love, that everyone and everything belongs, we create this resistance. You're a mother, you have this baby already, this soul, this body is in you, and you just make the decision to have an abortion, or if you had a miscarriage, but you're not aware of this baby as a human being, as a soul already part of the system. You're not seeing this baby, you're not seeing this soul, you're rejecting him or her in a way. So what problems can create this? Like many problems, for the mother and for everyone. Like I was experiencing issues because of that. My grandmother, she had an abortion, and she had actually a couple of them. And I found out that I was carrying that information. There's something called blind loyalty. So I was loyal to that soul. And how can I be loyal to a soul that experienced abortion? So for many years, I experienced feeling rejected, not being able to fit in life. Like I was always experiencing that rejection. Once I recognized that, my life transformed tremendously. It's a huge change. It's not something subtle, but it's huge change. And I've seen that in many people. Also, mothers that are not able to, get pregnant again, or relationships that break after that, having an abortion, health issues. Many situations come from that. So the invitation for the mothers that are here that did it, can definitely do a family constellation, because that's really, helping the process. But it's something that you could do on your end. It's having your own ritual where you see this baby, like you light a candle for a few days and give this place to this baby, give this baby a name, tune into the feeling of the soul. You can acknowledge that I feel your joy, I feel your pain, I feel your rejection. Present yourself. I'm sorry I was not ready for you. It was more important in my life, whatever is true for you at that moment. And then give this baby a place. Okay, you are my first child, or you're my third child. Your name is this. You're part of the family now. I recognize you. And also tell this to your other children and to the family. Recognize and make them part of the family. Give them a place in the family system, not just with your head, but really with your heart, so then life can flow again.
That's a great suggestion, to have that ceremony and acknowledge that child, and also the acknowledgement that at times it's an extremely difficult choice for a woman to make. I've seen cases where a child was a result of family incest or of a very brutal rape. So it's a tough decision. But yeah, I get the recognition of that soul as a family member. I think that's beautiful. Talking about souls, how does the concept of family soul influence an individual's behavior, and how can family constellations help this cycle of suffering?
The concept of the family soul is also a concept that Bert Hellinger brought to us, and it's related to what we can refer as a field of energy. Family soul is this field of energy that carries information. There are some memories, there's some information there. So we're all connected to this family soul. We're all connected to this information. So we're being affected, and we're affecting this family soul, this field of information. So in terms of suffering, that's a deep question. It just reminds me of the Buddha, and how he was inviting us to overcome ignorance of who we are and remembering the truth of who we really are, and recognizing the suffering as a choice. I love family constellations because in family constellations, we can also bring awareness to that spiritual essence that is our truth. When we are identified with our ego, we are in disconnection with life, and that's a great recipe for suffering. But when we're able to remember, not just rationally in theory, but really embodying and connecting and feeling the truth that we are connected to all, that we are, however we're going to call it, this pure awareness, this spirit, we can recognize that there's a beauty in this design of life, and goes beyond what we can say with words. But it's about this practice of reconnecting and remembering our essence, at every moment. Family constellations is one of those great tools that help us, and again, in the practice of the now, because what is necessary for a representative or anybody to be impacted by these constellations is presence. And in here, we do a meditation before, sometimes in between, and at the end, to bring this presence so we can recognize what's happening in ourselves. We can recognize our thoughts, our emotions, and our experience deep inside of reality, which is, again, the great key for living in beauty.
Yeah, and also so interesting, when one is in a session, the arising of emotions and feelings and sentiments that appear out of nowhere, but seem to be very much related to the whole family system or the session that's happening. It's absolutely fascinating. Diego, what are some of the misconceptions people have around family constellations? You mentioned some of your own, like I've had them too. There was skepticism at the beginning of, is this really true? Are people making things up? Which I don't believe is the case anymore. But I'm curious to hear, what are some of the misconceptions that have come up in some of your sessions, and how do you address them?
There's many of them. One of those is also the skepticism that some of us, have at the beginning. And sometimes when I perceive this in a person that it is really wanting to bring some healing, I do also healing constellations, which is that I have the interview in private, and then I bring the elements in secret. So I tell them, okay, you're going to represent number 1, number 2, number 3. They have no idea who they're representing. And then at the end, I tell them who they were, and they were in shock, recognizing the truth of the power of this modality. There's so many other misconceptions, like usually also I invite the seekers to bring an intention that is for them, meaning that a lot of people come like, okay, I want to change my husband. I want to do a constellation to heal my husband, or I want to do a constellation to heal my little child. Oh yeah, how old is your little child? 43. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a little bit too late for you to influence in that person when they are children, under the age of 18, when they are not still responsible for their lives. You as a parent can do a constellation on your children. But then when they are adults, that's it. They are free. They are adults. They're free to make their own choices. So that's one thing, bringing intentions for your personal life. Some of the misconceptions sometimes is that people see these as medium sessions. Like, okay, I want to talk to my father that he passed away. I know facilitators that see it like that as well. I don't see it like that. And I've done like experiments, and I know Hellinger also did some things like that because, of course, Hellinger brought these into awareness, but he's not, in control of what we're perceiving there. It's alive, it's moving. That's why also family constellations are being evolving since the beginning and keep on this permanent evolution. And also Bert Hellinger, during his lifetime, he was allowing this to keep on evolving. But what I see many times is more like what we are representing here. It's related to the unconscious dynamics that you carry in your life. Like, for instance, big insight for me, in one of my constellations, I observed my father being this little kid. I was like, no, that's the constellation is wrong. And it was not that the constellation was wrong, because it was not showing me my father who passed away. It was showing me the memory that I was carrying in my unconscious, the emotional link that I developed with my father when I was a child. So that's one of the, I think, important misconceptions that people might have.
Let's talk about the topic of family secrets, because I've been in a couple of sessions where, let's call them family secrets, have somehow surfaced in the session, and it wasn't necessarily the seeker who was stating that there was a family secret, yet somehow one of the representatives felt that there was something being hidden, and it leads to sort of the bringing forth of a family secret. Could you speak into that?
Yeah, family secrets can create also issues in the system, because many times that's also rejecting something. Like, for instance, the grandmother had an affair with someone and never told it, or another abortion, or the bankruptcy, or this relative that he was from the other political party, or this person that he was gay. All these little things are, in a way, rejection to somewhere or to something. And as long as we carry this rejection, this separation from something, life and the system will bring it to us until we can see it again with love and integrate it to life. Whatever you resist, persist. Whatever your system resists, persist in your life. So that's why it's important to bring it, not necessarily to know the secret, but just to observe that there was some type of rejection there and give it its place. Something also very important is that we don't bring judgment here. One of the beautiful things about family constellations is that help us to bring compassion or this humility in the sense that life is not, doing things right or wrong, but it's just neutral. And we are the ones, human beings, who bring the judgments of good or bad, right and wrong. Like, as I was saying with the abortions, for instance, it's like it's not about judging what we did, what you did, but it's about bringing the awareness of how this is bringing these implications to your life or into your system. And in the same way with your ancestors, like, recognizing that. A beautiful thing that Bert Hellinger also brought is that understanding of forgiveness. Many people say, okay, I say, I see my ancestor, I forgive you for what you did. But that's very arrogant. When we have this understanding of forgiveness, like we are this judge, of the universe, and we have the possibility to say, okay, I'm gonna give you permission to exist and to have your destiny. But the other possibility that Bert Hellinger is bringing to us is more the recognition that forgiveness is the acceptance that we are the same. And under certain circumstances, any one of us is capable of anything. Any one of us in certain circumstances is capable of murdering or abortion or anything else. So when we can really from our hearts see that in our ancestors, in someone else, that's a real forgiveness, the recognition that we are the same.
Got it. So more being in a state of sort of neutral observation of whatever happened and sort of just observing its place in the system and its impact in the system, as opposed to being in judgment of them. I think that's a great distinction. Diego, on the topic, we started off the discussion with, you were talking about family constellations being a modality that brings in other modalities. And I wanted to bring in a topic that is, a lot of this channel is about, and it's very near and dear to my heart. And that's the topic of plant medicines and therapies. And when I say plant medicines, I'm referring to oftentimes psychedelics, entheogens, psilocybin, peyote, ayahuasca. And I wanted to speak about those and traditional therapy, what their place is with regard to family constellations and how they are integrated or used or not.
Yeah, these power plants are very effective, and they're like really good friends of family constellations. Like, that's been my personal journey. It's usually an integration of these modalities, and also with meditation and art. Plant medicine and constellations work really good. Like, for instance, what the experience that I was sharing about recognizing the abortion that my grandmother had, I had this memory first in a plant medicine ceremony, in an ayahuasca ceremony. I was able to see that. And then in a family constellation, I was able to fully integrate it. Sometimes we can bring to awareness a trauma or something that is not fully integrated in one of them. It could be in family constellations or in plant medicine, and help the integration with the other one. What was happening with my father, for instance, and then going to a peyote ceremony to connect with my father in a spiritual way, in a deeper way. So they go really good together. And sometimes I do these workshops, these retreats, where we do it in connection. Like, sometimes we do a night of medicine ceremonies, and then the other day we do family constellations with that openness that also the plant medicine help us. Because for the ones that don't know, these medicines help us to open our awareness, open our hearts, and in a way, like, increase the volume of our inner dialogue, so we can become more aware of our inner reality, and then transform it and heal it consciously.
Amazing. I love the combination of all the different modalities. I absolutely agree with you. I think they each one powerful in and of themselves, and then combined even more powerful. Speaking of powerful healing, I'm currently reading a book on the Enneagram, and then how that relates to sort of societal healing and healing society at large, and not just necessarily the individual or the family unit. I wanted to ask you, how do you feel family constellations could contribute to sort of broader societal healing?
In the same way that we are connected and influenced by our family system and our family soul, we can also influence our family system and our family soul. So anytime that one human being heals, humanity is healing. The universe is healing. And we could see that, very practically in the small groups. For instance, we're in a session, and then at the end of the session, somebody turns on the phone and like, oh, I have like all these calls from my mother, my brother, and they're just calling to say, I love you. I want to talk to you about this. What happened? So we're influencing everyone, and we see that all the time. Again, my invitation is always, don't do it for that. Do it for you. But when you do it for you, you can really create that effect on your family and in the world. It's definitely so important. I see the future where every family is doing constellations, where everyone is aware of these dynamics. The Zulu tribe, where Bert Hellinger in Africa went to connect with them, to learn from them, to teach them and to learn from them. And we could have that awareness as a community, as a society, where we recognize that those dynamics in the way life works is not something that it's with a we're creating. The law of gravity, we're not making that up. We're just using it because it's how nature works. Other orders that are influencing our relationships, our health, the where we go in life. And by doing this, we can definitely experience a healthier humanity. It's beautiful how in countries like Brazil, they are already using family constellations in the government, in court, for conflict resolution. They use family constellations. I see more of these things happening in life. Again, we could also use family constellations. We call them business constellations, or have different names, but you also use it for organizations, for businesses, for corporations, to bring more harmony in the way they're relating as a system.
Wow, that's a very inspiring vision indeed. And I mean, I love the idea of bringing these modalities into governments and businesses. So that brings me to our closing question, Diego. What is your message to the world?
My message to the world, my message to this person that is observing right now is for you to take your place in life, which means that you can release all those obstacles and limitations that are affecting you to be fully here in this moment. When we have unresolved issues in our family, in our past, we have this difficulty to being fully present here in this flow of life, in the true connection with life, with yourself, with others. So my invitation to you is to take your place in life so you can fully experience this gift that we are receiving and creating at this moment.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Diego. And yeah, unfortunately, our interview has come to an end, but I wanted to take a moment to thank you and to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for a couple of things, and these come from personal experience and from attending your workshops and sessions. I want to say thank you for sharing your personal journey so openly and candidly in this interview. There's always a huge appreciation for that, for people who are willing to be open about where they've come from, what they've experienced, where they're at. I want to say thank you for sharing your expertise and sharing your wisdom with us. I've learned so much in this interview. Thank you for that. You have a very interesting capacity and skill to help people reframe things. I think is such a gift to the person receiving, let's call it reframing, and to be able to help them see through new eyes and experience a situation or see it newly. Thank you for creating the container and the space for people's healing. I've seen it a number of times in your workshops. It's amazing. The results were incredible. And lastly, I would like to acknowledge and thank you for taking your place in life, because I feel that by taking your place in life, you allow others to and inspire them to take their places in life too. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gaia. I also appreciate this recognition, this acknowledgement. I receive it with all the love. And I also want to say thank you for your participation in the workshops, always, so open, vulnerable, brave, honest, and also for opening this space so we can share this message and this tool for many others that can benefit from it. And also for everything that you're doing with your channel, sharing these important messages, about plant medicine and healing that are so necessary in this moment of transformation that we're going through as humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. Received. For those of you who have been watching and who've enjoyed the interview, please feel free to like it, share it. If you have any questions or comments for Diego, please put them in the comments below. I'm sure he'll answer them for you. And also, if you're interested in participating in one of he has a host of workshops, everything from coaching to Temescal to Family Constellations. I highly, highly recommend them. And we'll put a link to Diego's website below. So again, thank you for participating with us. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing.